Lexi Hull, at the end of the game on Indianapolis radio, she spilled the beans. She said, that play didn't go exactly as planned. Wait, what do you mean? Caitlin Clark had a wide open three. Wait, getting her wide open to win the game wasn't exactly as planned? Stephanie White's reaction after Caitlin Clark hit the game-winning shot. Reaction of a coach said, that didn't really go exactly as planned.
Picture this. The final buzzer hasn't even finished echoing, and Caitlin Clark just drained a cold-blooded three-pointer to hand the Connecticut Sun a loss they weren't ready for. You'd expect the entire Indiana Fever sideline to be losing their minds. But Stephanie White? She's standing there with the same energy you'd have watching your food get carried to somebody else's table. Stone cold. No fist pump, no fire, no nothing. And that reaction alone, before any of the details even came out, was already telling a story. Because here's where it gets real. After the game, Lexi Hull went on Indianapolis radio and casually dropped something that had people hitting rewind. She basically told the hosts that the final possession didn't play out the way the team had drawn it up in that huddle. Not a minor tweak, not a slight adjustment. She made it sound like what actually unfolded on the court and what was supposed to happen were two completely separate things. And when a player admits that publicly, you have to stop and ask why. Now sit with that for a second. If the designed play wasn't built around getting Caitlin Clark, one of the most lethal shooters in this league right now, a player defense is literally game planned specifically to contain, a clean, wide-open look from three to ice the game, then what was the actual call? Because from every angle, that's exactly what went down. Clark got the ball in space, caught clean, elevated, and buried it without a second thought. It looked like a play drawn up for her, but apparently it wasn't. That's what makes Stephanie White's blank stare suddenly start making a whole lot of sense. That wasn't a coach being composed under pressure. That was a coach standing there realizing her players had just gone completely off script during the highest stakes possession of the entire game. And somehow, inexplicably, it worked. The designed action got scrapped in real time, and by everything we're piecing together now, Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark made a decision entirely on their own, trusted the moment, and just ran with it. No timeout called, no audible from the sideline, just instinct. And the ball went through the net.
We got the inbound from Sophie to Caitlin Clark. Now, many people are thinking this is supposed to be right here. Give it to Kelsey Mitchell right here. She's gonna get it going downhill. Tries to get a nice pull-up midi or taking it all the way to the rack. However, this misdirection on the backside, Sonia Citrone and Cody McMahon, they miscommunicate. They get lost in assignment. They're supposed to switch and they don't switch. So one goes with Lexi Hull.
The play that closed out that game? It didn't come from Stephanie White's clipboard. It came from Austin Kelly, the assistant coach who's quietly been the architect behind Indiana's entire out-of-bounds operation this season. This is the same guy who designed the play that got Caitlin Clark a game-tying three against Washington. Same guy who drew up the Aaliyah Boston mid-range look that didn't fall. And on this night, against Connecticut, he was the one with the marker in his hand when the Fever circled up for that final huddle. The play was built around Kelsey Mitchell as the primary option. She was supposed to use an Aaliyah Boston screen, catch it on the move, and attack downhill toward the rim. That's where the play's first gear lived. On the backside, Kelly layered in some misdirection, Lexi Hull setting a back screen, with Caitlin Clark theoretically peeling off that action as a secondary read if the defense locked up Mitchell. That's smart design. Give the defense two things to handle and let the cracks reveal themselves. But Connecticut's Sonia Citrone and JC Sheldon didn't just let a crack form. They basically knocked the whole wall down. Their assignment on that back screen was a switch. One player stays on Lexi Hull, the other stays glued to Caitlin Clark. Simple, fundamental, the kind of coverage you rep until it's automatic. Except both of them followed Lexi Hull at the same time. in the same direction, leaving Caitlin Clark, the player that opposing coaches lose sleep over, the one defenses literally restructure their entire scheme just to account for, standing completely wide open at the three-point line with the clock bleeding out. That's not just a lapse in communication, that's a full-on defensive meltdown at the worst possible moment. You cannot, under any circumstances, lose track of Caitlin Clark in a late-game situation. She doesn't need much. She doesn't need long. Give her a sliver of daylight, and she will make you regret it before your feet even leave the ground. Two defenders, one critical possession, both made the exact same wrong read simultaneously. And on the other end of that mistake was someone who's been waiting her whole career for exactly that kind of moment. Caitlin Clark didn't blink, didn't hesitate, didn't even flinch. The ball was leaving her hands before the defense even had a chance to realize what went wrong.
Then we have Millie. I'm Millie Rock on any block. Then we have Millie. The first thing that shows that play wasn't for Caitlin is AB screening to free Mitchell. The second thing is the pin down isn't set for Cece. A lot of serendipity. Sophie made a clutch read and react play, and Cece is clutch as F. Now, if you look at the comments on this, many people are disagreeing.
So the online discourse around this play started heating up fast, and right in the middle of it was somebody going by Coach Anderson. And honestly, nobody seems entirely sure who this person even is, but they stepped into the conversation with what they framed as the definitive breakdown of what went down. According to Coach Anderson, the official explanation is pretty straightforward. Kelsey Mitchell was the first read, Caitlin Clark was the second read, and Sophie Cunningham made the call to skip past Mitchell entirely because the defender guarding the inbounder was positioning herself to take that passing lane completely out of the equation. That's why the pass to Caitlin came in a little late. Sophie had to make the adjustment in real time. Clean explanation. Makes sense on the surface. Case closed, right? Not even close, because Millie, who's been putting out some of the sharper tactical breakdowns on this team all season, came right back with a counter that's hard to just wave off. The argument was essentially this. Two separate pieces of this play's structure tell you it was never built with Caitlin Clark as the actual target. First, you've got Aaliyah Boston running a screen specifically to free up Kelsey Mitchell. That's not incidental, that's the play's engine. The whole first gear of this action is designed to manufacture a clean catch for Mitchell coming downhill. You don't draw that up if your real intention is to get the ball to someone on the backside. Second, and this is the part that really makes you lean in, the pin-down screen on the backside wasn't even being executed in a way that was going to create a clean look for Clark. It wasn't set with precision. It wasn't timed to optimize her catch. The alignment of the whole action suggests Clark's movement was more of an afterthought built into the design rather than a primary weapon being deliberately unleashed. Millie's overall read on the situation was that Sophie Cunningham deserves enormous credit for making an elite instinctual decision under pressure, and that Caitlin Clark's ability to perform in high-leverage moments is something you simply cannot overlook or understate. It wasn't scheme. It wasn't a master plan unfolding exactly as Austin Kelly drew it up. It was a player making a split-second read and trusting the most dangerous shooter on the floor to finish the job. And Caitlin Clark, for her part, did exactly what anyone paying attention this season already knew she would do. She caught it, squared up, and sent the ball through the net without a single moment of hesitation. But here's where the fan base conversation gets genuinely interesting, because the comment sections under every one of these breakdowns look like a divided community that can't even agree on what they just watched. One half of the Fever fan base is fully convinced this was a deliberate misdirection scheme from the start, that the Mitchell action was always the bait, and that getting Clark open on the backside was the real intended outcome all along. In this version of the story, Austin Kelly is a genius playing chess while Connecticut's defense was playing checkers, and everything unfolded exactly according to plan. The other half is just as convinced that Kelsey Mitchell was legitimately supposed to get that ball, that Sophie Cunningham went completely off script when she saw the passing lane close, and that what looked like a brilliant designed play was actually one player's improvised decision colliding with another player's ice-cold execution. And the reason this debate isn't resolving itself is because, depending on which coaching source you believe and which part of the film you're looking at, both takes have something to stand on. What both sides do agree on even if they won't admit it in the same breath, is that without Caitlin Clark on the other end of that pass, none of this matters. The debate only exists because she made it. The story only has a dramatic ending because she was standing in that exact spot, at that exact moment, completely ready.
Plan. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. If people are saying, all right, well, this should have gone to Kelsey, but it went to Caitlin Clark instead, and then Lexi Hull is coming out and confirming, well, that wasn't exactly what was drawn up.
Here's where everything starts to lock into place. And it all circles back to what Lexi Hull said on that radio show after the game. Because that interview isn't just a casual post-game soundbite anymore. In context with everything else we've been breaking down, it becomes the piece of evidence that kind of ties the whole thing together. Think about the logic here. If this play went exactly as Austin Kelly drew it up, if the entire design was always pointing toward getting Caitlin Clark a wide-open three-pointer at the final buzzer, then why on earth would Lexi Hull get on Indianapolis radio and tell the hosts that it didn't go exactly according to plan? That's not how players talk about plays that worked the way they were supposed to. When something goes right and the result matches the intention, players come out and say exactly that. They credit the coaching staff, they talk about the execution, they celebrate the design. Lexi didn't do any of that. She specifically chose language that created distance between what happened on the floor and what was supposed to happen in that huddle. And here's the thing. She wasn't talking about sloppy execution. She wasn't saying the timing was a half second off, or that somebody's footwork wasn't clean coming off the screen, or that the spacing could have been tighter. Those are the kinds of technical complaints you hear when a play works, but not perfectly. What Lexi said was fundamentally different. She was speaking to the structure of the possession itself, the bones of what was drawn up versus what actually played out. That's a much bigger admission than people initially gave it credit for. She essentially confirmed, without making it a headline, that the final product the viewing audience watched was not the play that was designed. So let's reason through this the way it deserves to be reasoned through. If we take Lexi's words seriously, and there's no real reason not to because she has zero motivation to lie about something this specific, and we layer that on top of everything the film is already showing us about how this play was structured, then one conclusion keeps rising to the top. Kelsey Mitchell was the actual intended recipient of that inbound pass. The play was built to get her the ball in motion, coming off Aaliyah Boston's screen, so she could attack the rim going downhill with pace and force the defense to make a decision. Either she scores at the rim, or Connecticut collapses and she finds an open teammate on the kickout. That's the play. That's what Austin Kelly put on that whiteboard. But Sophie Cunningham looked at what was developing in front of her in real time, and this is the part that deserves genuine recognition. And she processed the situation faster than the defense even realized what was happening. Sonia Citron and JC Sheldon had already committed their mistake. They were both chasing Lexi Hull, leaving Caitlin Clark in open space with no one assigned to her. And Sophie caught all of that before the play had even fully developed. She made a decision that wasn't in the playbook. She bypassed the designed primary action entirely, ignored the drawn-up first read, and put the ball in the hands of Caitlin Clark. Now, let's be clear about what that decision actually represents, because it's easy to gloss over it in the excitement of the moment. Sophie Cunningham, in the final seconds of a game with everything on the line, chose to override the coaching staff's call in real time. That's not a small thing. That's an audible at the highest stakes moment of the night, made entirely on instinct and court vision. And it worked. Not because of luck, not because of chaos, but because Sophie read the defense perfectly and trusted the one player on the floor who was built for that exact moment. Caitlin Clark, for her part, didn't need a second invitation. She didn't need the play to be drawn up for her. She didn't need the design to center around her. She just needed the ball, a fraction of open space, and a clock that still had a little life left in it. Sophie gave her all three, and Caitlin did the rest. catching clean, rising without hesitation, and splashing a three-pointer that the Connecticut Sun will probably be thinking about for a long time. The plan changed. The result didn't. And that's the most Caitlin Clark thing that's happened all season.
Look at Stephanie White's reaction after the shot goes in. And by reaction, I mean lack of reaction. Now, many people are saying, oh, well, this is because that's her on the bottom of the screen. Well, that's because there's a lot of time.
Let's talk about Stephanie White's body language in that moment.
Yesterday's game happened, and I think everybody knows that whatever they drew up at the end of the game did not happen. Did not happen. Sophie Cunningham made an incredible read. The play wasn't great. And in the end, it is hilarious. Aaliyah Boston did a Thomas Bryant. If you guys don't remember, when LeBron James hit the shot to make him the all-time leading scorer.
Caitlin Clark just put the entire league on notice. We're talking about a buzzer beater that didn't just close out a game. It announced that this version of the Indiana Fever is something different. The second that ball left her hands, you already knew it was good. There's a level of confidence Caitlin carries every time she steps on that floor. And it's not the kind you develop over time, it's the kind you showed up with. From the moment she arrived in Indiana, people questioned whether her college dominance would hold up, whether the pace of the pro game would expose her, whether the physicality of WNBA defenders would change her. Night after night, game winner after game winner, she answers every single one of those questions without opening her mouth. This isn't a rookie still figuring things out. This is a player who walked into the league and immediately started rewriting what the WNBA looks like to the rest of the world. Arenas are selling out. Ratings are at record highs. The conversation around women's basketball has never taken up this much space in the culture. And standing right at the center of all of that is number 22, pulling up from distances that most professionals wouldn't even practice from. None of what she does out there is accidental. That's preparation colliding with pressure, and Caitlin Clark doesn't shrink in pressure. She gravitates toward it. The bigger the moment, the sharper she gets. That's what separates truly generational players from everyone else, and Indiana is watching one do it in real time. But here's where it gets really interesting, because what followed that final buzzer wasn't your typical post-game celebration. There's a clear difference between a team celebrating a basketball win and a team actively putting something on display. What went down after that shot hit completely different. Players weren't just going through the normal winning motions, there was a purpose to it. The energy in that moment extended well past the relief of getting a W in the standings. When you actually pay attention to the body language, to who was gravitating toward who, to the intensity behind those reactions, this wasn't just a group of women celebrating a hard-fought victory. This was a group of women communicating something to anyone paying close enough attention. In the WNBA, so much of the real messaging happens away from the actual game. It happens on social media, in sideline interactions, in the way players choose to publicly show up for each other when the cameras are still rolling. Moments like this carry weight that goes far beyond the final score. And if you've been following this Indiana Fever situation closely, you already know exactly what that weight is connected to. And that brings us to the question that the entire basketball community is now sitting with. Did we just watch the Indiana Fever locker room draw a line in the sand against their own coaching staff? Because that's what people are saying. That's the conversation flooding every comment section, every sports forum, every group chat full of WNBA fans right now. This isn't just drama for the sake of drama. When players on a professional roster start visibly rallying around each other in ways that seem pointed and intentional, that usually means something is brewing beneath the surface that the front office and coaching staff can't ignore. The relationship between a locker room and its coaches is one of the most fragile dynamics in all of professional sports. And when Caitlin Clark is involved, when she's the gravitational center of everything happening with this franchise, every single move gets amplified tenfold. What might be a minor internal tension on any other team becomes a national storyline when your most important player is the most talked about athlete in women's sports. That's the reality Indiana is navigating right now, and it is anything but simple.
A lot of people are taking the fact that they went rogue as almost like dissent against the coaches. Dissent against the organization, that the players are turning on the coaches, the players aren't playing for Steph anymore, and this could be not further from the truth, or there could be truth into it. And I'll explain the two different situations, because there is nuance to this. There is absolutely some nuance to this entire conversation.
Let's get into exactly why this particular moment matters as much as it does. At the end of regulation against the Dallas Wings, the Indiana Fever had a play drawn up. The coaching staff had a specific design, a specific intention, and a specific player they wanted the ball going to in that moment. That's how professional basketball works. You get a timeout, you diagram something out, and every person on that floor is supposed to execute their assignment. That's the structure. That's the expectation. Except that's not what happened. Sophie Cunningham looked at the situation unfolding in front of her and made a split-second decision to completely abandon the design play and go with what she was reading on the floor. And that improvised, off-script, against the game plan decision is the one that ended up working. The shot went up, the moment landed, and suddenly, Sophie Cunningham wasn't a player who went rogue. She was a hero. The kind of hero that gets mobbed by her teammates. The kind of hero that gets her moment plastered all over social media within minutes. What's significant here isn't just that it worked. It's that nobody on that roster even flinched at the fact that the design play got thrown out the window. Nobody looked toward the bench with hesitation. Nobody seemed concerned about what the coaching staff's reaction was going to be. The celebration was immediate, genuine, and completely unfiltered. And Caitlin Clark was right in the middle of all of it, matching that energy like she'd been waiting for exactly this kind of moment to unfold. That's not nothing. When the face of your franchise is that visibly locked in with a teammate who just went against the coach's call, that speaks to something deeper about the culture that's developing inside that locker room. Because here's what people keep glossing over when they talk about Caitlin Clark's impact on this team. It isn't just about her stat line. It's about the gravity she creates around everyone else. When a player of her caliber fully embraces a moment like what Sophie Cunningham just gave them, it sends a message to every other player on that roster. It says, your instincts are trusted here. It says this team runs on feel just as much as it runs on scheme. And when that message is being co-signed by the player who is quite literally putting this franchise on the map right now, it carries enormous weight in that locker room. The social media piece is also not something to wave off as just players being players online. In today's WNBA, social media is part of the game. It's where narratives get built, where fan bases rally, and where players communicate things that might be too pointed to say directly in a post-game press conference. When the entire roster turns Sophie's moment into a coordinated celebration online, that's intentional. That's a statement dressed up as enthusiasm. And the fact that it's all swirling around a team where Caitlin Clark is the undeniable center of attention means every layer of it gets examined under a microscope. Now here's where it gets complicated, because not everything is as straightforward as it looks on the surface. And anyone telling you this is a simple situation either hasn't thought it through or isn't being honest with you. There are genuinely two separate ways to look at what happened here, and both of them carry real merit depending on where you're standing.
I'm putting it out there right now. Not one player dislikes Stephanie White personally that is currently on this team. I can be almost certain of that. I can say that with 99% certainty. But again, I don't know if they dislike Christy Zides personally. She was the bad coach. And again, anyone who's been on a team knows sometimes you can like your coach and you can just... Sometimes you can like your coach as a person and you can just never want to play for them again. I've had plenty of coaches like that through my life where I'm like, I genuinely, like, I have nothing as a person, I just can't play for them anymore.
Before we go any further down this road, we need to pump the brakes and lay out some ground truth. Because without the proper foundation, this whole conversation becomes just another hot take that doesn't actually serve anybody. So let's establish what we actually know versus what people are spinning. First and most importantly, Stephanie White is not someone that the players on this roster have a personal problem with. That's not really up for debate. From everything that's come out publicly and from every read you can get on the internal dynamics of this team, the issue if there even is one, is not about Stephanie White, the human being. It's not about her character. It's not about whether she treats people with respect in the building. By virtually all accounts, she does. And that distinction matters enormously, because the internet has a way of flattening these situations into villain narratives. And that's not what this is. Nobody is out here saying Stephanie White is a bad person. Nobody on that roster is walking into practice with animosity toward their head coach on a personal level. That's almost certainly not what's happening, and it would be irresponsible to frame it that way. What is more complicated, and what anyone who has actually played competitive sports at any meaningful level already understands from lived experience, is that you can deeply respect someone as a human being while simultaneously having real frustrations with them as a coach. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. They exist together all the time. In professional sports locker rooms, and pretending otherwise is just naive. A player can genuinely like their coach, enjoy their presence in the building, appreciate the way they communicate on a personal level, and still feel like the system isn't working, still feel like the rotations aren't right, still feel like the play calling in critical moments isn't putting the team in the best position to win. That tension is one of the oldest stories in sports, and it plays out on every level, from high school gyms to NBA arenas to WNBA courts. And when you're talking about a locker room that includes Caitlin Clark, a player who came into this league with an almost supernatural understanding of the game, a player who has seen what winning basketball looks like and knows what it feels like to operate within a system built specifically around her strengths, that tension has the potential to be amplified in ways that most coaching situations never have to deal with. Caitlin Clark is not just another talented player pushing back against a coach's system. She is the reason this franchise is relevant in a way it has never been before. She is the reason people are tuning in. She is the reason tickets are selling and cameras are showing up, and the national conversation keeps circling back to Indianapolis. That reality changes the power dynamic in ways that are genuinely unprecedented for a team like Indiana. And Stephanie White is navigating that whether she signed up for it or not. So when we're talking about friction, real or perceived, between this locker room and the coaching staff, we have to hold all of that context at the same time. It's not personal, but it is real. And the difference between those two things is exactly where this story lives.
We don't know what exactly type of coach Stephanie White is because we're not behind closed doors. If Stephanie White is a coach that encourages players to, or that is going to encourage players to make reads, even if it's against a set play, which I don't believe she is, but again, I don't know this because I'm only judging based on what we've seen publicly, then this isn't going to cause anything. If it turns out that Stephanie White's one of those coaches, that's like, it's my way or no way. And people are saying, oh, Austin Kelly drew it up. Yes, but like, who hired Austin Kelly and gave him that like role? That's Stephanie White okaying it all. If it's a coach's way or no way, and there's tons of coaches like that, by the way. There's tons of good coaches that are like that.
Here's where the conversation shifts into territory that a lot of people aren't equipped to have, because this isn't just about one broken play or one viral celebration. This goes straight to the heart of coaching philosophy. And there are genuinely two schools of thought in basketball that have both produced championships and both produced disasters depending on execution. There is a very real and very legitimate style of coaching that operates on total system commitment. No freelancing, no improvisation, no individual reads that deviate from the called play, regardless of what the defense is giving you. The coach sees the game from a higher vantage point, designs the system with all 5 players in mind, and demands that every single person on the floor trusts that structure completely, even when their instincts are screaming something different at them in the moment. And the reason that philosophy exists isn't because those coaches are control freaks or because they don't trust their players' basketball IQ. The reason it exists is actually deeply logical when you break it down. There's a story that circulates in basketball circles about a coach at a preseason camp who pulled a player aside after he made a decision mid-play that was technically the right basketball read. The defense gave him something and he took it, but it wasn't what was called. And the coach sat him down and walked him through exactly why that was still a problem. He told that player that he understood the decision made sense in isolation. He told him the read was good. But then he explained that the moment one player starts operating on their own instincts instead of the called play, the other 4 people on the floor are running something completely different. They're executing the actual design. They're setting screens for a play that's no longer happening. They're cutting to spaces that are now occupied. The whole system breaks down, not because one person made a bad decision, but because one person made a different decision. And that's the distinction that separates system basketball from instinct basketball at the highest level. That philosophy has a championship pedigree you cannot argue with. Greg Popovich built one of the most decorated dynasties in NBA history on exactly that foundation. The San Antonio system was so deeply ingrained that players who came from completely different backgrounds and completely different styles of play transformed themselves to fit it. And they won because of it. Phil Jackson's triangle offense operated on the same principle. The triangle only works when all 5 players are reading the same cues, making the same movements, and trusting them. Geometry of the system over their own individual instincts. It's not a coincidence that both of those coaches are considered among the greatest to ever do it. The system works, but only under one very specific condition. Players have to genuinely believe at a core level that what the coach is drawing up is more valuable than what their own eyes are telling them in the moment. That belief has to be total. It cannot be halfway. The second a player starts privately questioning whether the system is actually better than their read, the whole thing starts to crack. And the longer that crack goes unaddressed, the wider it gets. That's exactly what makes what we just watched in Indiana so telling. Because when Sophie Cunningham abandoned the designed play and the entire roster responded the way they did, with that immediate, enthusiastic, publicly displayed celebration, what they were really showing the world is that the belief in the system isn't there right now. Not fully. Maybe not even close to fully. And with Caitlin Clark leading that charge in energy and visibility, the message landed louder than anyone in that coaching staff probably wanted it to. She is too prominent, too watched, and too central to this franchise's identity for her reaction in that moment to go unanalyzed. When the most important player on your roster is that visibly energized by a teammate going off script, it raises a question that Stephanie White and her entire staff are going to have to answer, not for the media, but for themselves.
He was like, look, I know, I was trying to explain, I was like, look, what you did was right, but that's not the point. He's like, it's literally, if people just start going rogue and making reads, the offense that he wanted to run didn't work. And it was like, it's as long as everybody is making reads, he's like, if you do this, then 4 other people have to be on the same page, and that's not the case. There are coaches that have different philosophies. There are really good coaches that have different philosophies. Again, I play with some unbelievable coaches that have the philosophy of it's my way or no way.
Now put yourself in Stephanie White's shoes for a second, because her situation is genuinely one of the more complicated positions any coach in the WNBA has been in recently, and it doesn't get nearly enough nuanced discussion. She didn't walk into Indiana with some cold, authoritarian reputation. That's not who she is, and that's not how she was received when she took this job. Stephanie White built her name in this league as someone players want to play for, someone who invests in relationships, someone who makes players feel seen as human beings first and athletes second. That relational quality is real. It's documented, and it's genuinely why people around the league have respected her as a coach. She has a warmth to her coaching identity that a lot of people in her position simply don't have. And that's not a small thing when you're trying to build trust inside a professional locker room. But here's where the complexity lives. Because Stephanie White also came into Indiana with a vision, a structured offensive vision. A system that has specific rules, specific spacing principles, specific reads that she wants executed the way she diagrams them. And on paper, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Having a defined offensive identity is what separates organized professional basketball from 5 people just improvising on a court together. The problem isn't that she has a system. The problem is what happens when that system meets real game results and the numbers don't cooperate. Because you can sell a roster on a philosophy when things are clicking. You can ask players to trust the process when the process is visibly working. But when the results start coming back underwhelming and the statistics start telling a story that contradicts the vision, that's when even the most loyal players start having quiet conversations they wouldn't have otherwise. And the results right now are genuinely hard to defend. The Indiana Fever are sitting 9th in offensive rating across the league. 9th. Let that marinate for a second, because that number doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in the context of who is actually on this roster. You have Caitlin Clark running the point. Caitlin Clark, the player who single-handedly shifted the cultural footprint of women's basketball, who averaged numbers in college that nobody had ever seen before, who came into the WNBA and immediately proved that her game translated. You have Aaliyah Boston operating in the paint, one of the most fundamentally sound and versatile big players in the league. You have Kelsey Mitchell giving you secondary scoring punch that most teams in this league would build their offense around if she was their best option. That is not a 9th place offensive talent level. That is nowhere close to a 9th place offensive talent level. That's a top 3, top 4 conversation waiting to happen if everything is functioning the way it should be. When that kind of gap opens up between the talent on paper and the production on the floor, there is only one place the questions eventually land, and that's on the system and the people designing it. Players at this level are sophisticated. Caitlin Clark is one of the most basketball-intelligent players the sport has ever produced. She sees the floor at a level that very few people in the history of the game have been able to match. When someone with that kind of vision is operating inside a structure that's producing 9th place offensive efficiency, you better believe she feels it every single possession. She knows when a play design is putting her in a worse position than where her instincts would take her. She knows when the spacing is off. She knows when the reads being called from the sideline aren't matching what the defense is actually giving. And the more that disconnect persists, the harder it becomes for any player, let alone the most watched player in women's sports, to fully commit to the called play over what her own eyes are telling her. That erosion of trust in the system isn't a character flaw. It's a natural human response to evidence. And right now, the evidence is sitting at 9th place.
Caitlin Clark, I'd say, is not expecting to be subbed out of this possession. At this stage, Caitlin Clark is locking in, thinking, fuck this, I gotta get a stop. Like, she didn't miss a high 5. Like, I don't think there's anything in this. People are looking too far into this. But from a team perspective, in one of the high points of the season, if all of a sudden it turns out that the Indiana Fever or the coaches and the coaching staff are upset that they made a game-winning play, that's when you can lose a locker room.
Here's the part of this story that should have Indiana's front office genuinely losing sleep, and it connects directly back to Caitlin Clark, because everything with this franchise connects back to Caitlin Clark at this point. That's just the reality of what she's built here. But buried underneath all the highlight plays and the record-breaking moments and the sold-out arenas is a detail that reveals something deeply uncomfortable about how this team is being managed. Justin Pard has not played a single minute this season. Not one. 0. And before you shrug that off as a roster decision that doesn't involve Caitlin Clark, think about what it means for the environment she has to compete in every single day. Caitlin Clark did not come to Indiana to be part of a poorly managed situation. She came here to win. She came here to build something. She came here because this was the opportunity in front of her, and from day one, she poured everything she had into making this franchise matter on a national level. And she succeeded at that in ways that exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Arenas that used to be half full are now packed. Broadcasts that used to be afterthoughts are now appointment television. The Indiana Fever went from a franchise people acknowledged existed to a franchise people genuinely follow, debate, and invest in emotionally. Caitlin Clark did that. She carried that on her back, and she made it look natural. So when the organizations surrounding her start showing signs of dysfunction, real, documented, statistically supported dysfunction, it reflects on her in a way that isn't fair, but is absolutely unavoidable. She is the face. When the face is attached to a body that isn't functioning right, people notice. And Caitlin Clark notices most of all. Development contracts in the WNBA are not guaranteed playing time situations. Everybody understands that. When you sign a player to that kind of deal, the expectation on both sides is that minutes are earned, not handed over. But here's what makes this particular situation impossible to explain away with standard roster logic. Every single other player currently on a development contract in this league has gotten on the floor at some point this season. Every one of them. Even in the lowest leverage situations, even in blowouts where the game was decided before halftime, those players have seen real minutes. Because that's what the contract is literally designed to produce. You bring someone in on a development deal because you want to evaluate them under live game conditions. You want to see how they handle real pressure. You want to give them something to grow with. That's not a favor. That's the entire point of the structure. So when one specific player under that contract type hasn't gotten a single second of floor time, while every comparable player around the league has gotten something, that stops being a basketball decision and starts being something else entirely. And Caitlin Clark, who sees everything that happens inside that organization with a level of awareness that most people underestimate, is not blind to that. This is a woman who tracked every single statistical inefficiency in the Fever's offensive system and felt every one of them in her body on the court. You think she doesn't notice when a teammate who deserves an opportunity isn't getting one in a way that defies every established pattern? Caitlin Clark is one of the most detail-oriented, competitive minds in the sport right now. The small things don't escape her attention. They fuel her. They inform how she understands her environment. And when the environment starts showing cracks, real cracks, not manufactured drama, she feels those cracks differently than anyone else on the roster because she has more invested in this franchise turning into something special than anyone else wearing that uniform. That's what makes the Justin Pard situation matter beyond just the roster management conversation. It's a signal. It's the kind of signal that a player like Caitlin Clark picks up on and files away somewhere in her competitive brain. Players talk within that locker room. They see who's getting opportunities and who isn't. They form quiet opinions about how decisions are being made and whether those decisions are actually in service of the team winning or whether something else is driving them. And in a locker room where Caitlin Clark has become the undeniable heartbeat, where her energy sets the temperature for everything else, those quiet opinions don't stay quiet indefinitely. She doesn't have to say a word publicly for her perspective to be felt by every person in that building. Her presence alone amplifies everything. The front office built this entire franchise identity around what Caitlin Clark represents. And right now, the operational decisions being made around her are not matching the magnitude of what she's given this organization. That disconnect is not sustainable. And somebody in Indianapolis needs to recognize that before it becomes a much bigger story than it already is.